Battle of Britain, Living Through the War by Phoebe. The Battle of Britain happened during World War II. It was between July and October 1940. The Battle of Britain was an air war. This means that there were lots of planes dropping bombs onto targets on the ground. World War II. The Second World War started in 1939 when Germany, under the control of Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. Britain and France responded by declaring war on Germany. Prepare for war. When World War II started, people were afraid that the public would be killed by German aeroplanes dropping bombs on cities. Ordinary peaceful people became targets. Planes bombed houses, schools and hospitals, so the government organised for the children to be moved to the countryside, where it was believed that they would be safe. Evacuation. Families who lived in big cities were told that it was no longer safe to live there anymore, as the risk of being bombed was so huge. They needed to send their children away to the countryside to live. Sometimes they were able to live with friends or family in the country. Other times they had to live with families they didn't know. Saying goodbye. The evacuees' journey often started on their way to school. The school teachers would take them off to the train station to their new homes. The teachers would stay in the same village as the children and continue to teach them in their new areas. Lots of children got upset when they were saying goodbye. Each child took a gas mask, food for the journey and some sandwiches or an apple, a small bag of washing things and a few clothes. Attached to the children around their necks on a string were labels. On the labels it had the child's name, home address, school and where they were going. Lots of the journeys took a long time. The children were taken to meet their new families. Some of the children found this very, very exciting and settled happily, but others were very homesick and miserable, especially if their new families were mean or cruel. Before the Battle of Britain, people didn't travel like we do now. Lots of people hadn't been out of their home cities, so they hadn't seen the countryside or seen the crops growing in the fields or seen the farm animals. Britain will be next. After France surrendered to Germany, everyone was afraid that the German army would invade Britain next. That would be the end of the war. The Germans would win. They believed attack on Britain would come mainly by sea, so it is thought that it was too dangerous for all the children that were evacuated in earlier war to the coastal towns in south and east of our country to stay there. The coasts may be bombed or invaded, so it was decided that the evacuees would be moved inland where they would be safer. In June 1940, 47,000 children were evacuated from coastal towns on 97 trains. Payment for looking after evacuees. Housing an evacuee was required by law. Families had to take evacuees. If they refused, they were fined and could be taken to court. They got paid weekly for each evacuee they had. Payment was 10 shillings and 6 pence a week for each child over 10 and 8 shillings and 6 pence for a child younger than 10. Rations. Food was very hard to come by during the war. Each person was given a ration book by the government. They were able to use this book and go and buy the items of the shopping that they needed. They were only able to buy very basic items such as milk, butter, meat, cheese, egg and jam. People stopped being so fat during the war. Blackout. The enemy targeted at night, bombing anything in sight. To make it more difficult for bombers, all lights had to be turned off. People would put blackout curtains at their windows. There were wardens that would walk the streets looking for any lights, and they would call out, "Put that light out," if they saw anything. Safety from bombs. When there was a high risk of bombs, an air siren would sound. This was to let people know to find somewhere safe to go. At the start of war, people built Anderson shelters in their gardens. The government soon realised that these didn't offer very good protections from high explosive bombs. Then they tried to get as many people to underground shelters. Tea stalls were built and there would be singing to entertain everyone. Bomb sites. Children would often be seen playing in bomb sites, which is very dangerous. Local parks had been turned into allotments to grow food, as food was harder to get hold of. End of World War II. It was not until years after the Battle of Britain in 1945, the year World War II ended, that the children returned home to their family homes. Some evacuees returned home to find their homes had been destroyed by bombs. Others found that their parents had been killed and that they had no parents to care for them. Some evacuees tried to get home early without telling anybody and could not be found. Time to go home. Over 100 trains were used to get the evacuees home. 16 months after the start of evacuees going home, there were still 5,200 evacuees waiting to be reunited with their families. One way or another, these children would be affected by the war for the rest of their lives.